looking at a little bit more of the behavioralist approach, and after talking about it a little bit more, positive psychology has two components in application. So there's a lot of ways you can apply positive psychology. But some of the biggest forces for positive psychology to be applied in a grand scheme is preventative and enhancement. So preventative is kind of educating, preventing the bad, the maladaptive behaviors that people develop and learn over the course of their lives, stopping it before it even starts. And so a lot of this, there's primary prevention and secondary prevention. Primary prevention is stop it before it even happens. So kind of get into the root of the problem before it even becomes a problem. So for example, setting up government systems to teach children how to handle resiliency or coping mechanisms, and it's kind of like the hope that it's going to work in the future, and that if we can get to it before it becomes a problem, they'll have to do less fixing of the problem. Components of effective primary preventions are targeted populations, such like children, should be given knowledge about risky behavior to be prevented. Second, programs should be attractive. Third, programs should teach problem-solving skills as well as how to resist regressing into previous counterproductive patterns. Fourth, the program should change any norms or social structures that reinforce counterproductive behaviors. So the first thing I think of is the thing that we learned, when I was in elementary school, where they came in and they taught us that drugs were bad. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but that's kind of a primary prevention, teaching the negative things and educating so that it hopefully encourages it to not happen. And the targeted population was obviously children before they've even been introduced to drugs. The program should be attractive. It was in early 2000s, so it wasn't really that special. Teach problem-solving skills as well as how to resist regressing into previous counterproductive patterns. Kind of how to resist. In this context, how to resist doing drugs and how to handle feelings and motivations to want to try those things, like dealing with them now so that you don't see drugs as a option to fix your problems. Instead, oh, I remember this is what they warned me about to look out for so I can apply these methods and fix it before it even starts. And then change any norms or social structures that reinforce counterproductive behavior. So, for example, smoking cigarettes. So many more kids are not smoking cigarettes. Sounds strange, but before, decades ago, so many children, like teenagers and younger, were smoking cigarettes and it was normal. Now, with education and encouragement and all these other programs that show kids how dangerous cigarettes can be, how dangerous drugs can be, the use of those items has gone down substantially. So why I'm talking about that is that that's preventative, and then there's secondary prevention, which is when it's already happened, but you fix the problem while it's happening. And for behavioral psychology, there were therapeutic techniques such as behavior analysis and behavioral modification that were utilized to help people, specifically kids, learn new skills and overcome maladaptive behaviors. While conditioning, like operant conditioning, was used in many situations, in school, parents. So those were applied, but they weren't necessarily like, they're therapeutic in a sense, but they're really just trying to solve maladaptive behaviors. And in a sense, positive psychology took a bit of that, because trying to attempt to prevent maladaptive behaviors, the effort to stop and fix maladaptive behaviors through therapy. And then primary enhancements and secondary enhancements are making life good and making life the best it can possibly be. And those two, I'll get to it. Those two, this is fine. So primary enhancement involves the effort to establish optimal functioning and satisfaction, increase hedonic well-being by maximizing the pleasurable, or to increase eudaimonic well-being by setting and reaching goals. So this completely ties in Aristotle's view of human flourishing, of eudaimonic. That's a hard word to say, but it ties in human flourishing and the pleasure principle and virtues and egoism, and motivating somebody through things that they enjoy and making life enjoyable and pleasurable through enhancements. So primary enhancement is establishing optimal functioning and satisfaction, and secondary enhancement is sustain and build upon already optimal functioning and satisfaction. Happiness results from close interpersonal ties, especially those that lead to mating and the protection of offspring. Again, pleasure principle. It's just evolutionary. It's a natural part of our species, is the desire and need to procreate. And happiness stems from, one, a safe and supportive living unit, so people that you care about, relationships, like I said earlier, who work together, an environment that is fertile and productive of food. We're talking Maslow's hierarchy of needs right here. Stretching of our bodies through exercise, and the pursuit of meaningful goals in one's work. It's almost pretty much Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all in one go, but we'll get to that in a little bit because I haven't talked about Maslow yet. But anyway, it ties in many aspects of behavioral psychology, and then humanist psychology, which we're going to get to in a little bit, and then history of all of psychology, so in Aristotle and Plato and religion. So, but I found it interesting that the behavior piece is very impactful, of like reinforcing productive behavior and correcting and overcoming maladaptive behavior were both things that were similar in positive psychology and in behavioral psychology. And so I have to assume that positive psychology took that aspect of behavioral psychology into its own concepts.